The chamber fell silent and then exploded in disbelief. What began as an ordinary congressional hearing turned into one of the most explosive political showdowns Washington has seen in years. Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, known for his sharp wit and unshakable charm, dropped the bombshell that sent shockwaves through the Capitol. "The American people deserve to know what's really going on," he declared, his southern drawl slicing through the tension like a blade. Within seconds, the room was alive via shouts, gasps, whispers echoing off the marble walls. What Kennedy had uncovered about Senator Chris Van Hollen wasn't just political maneuvering up, it was a revelation that struck at the heart of trust in government. For months, rumors had swirled around Van Hollen's latest economic reform package sold to the public as a plan to protect working families. It promised relief for small businesses, tax fairness, and expanded benefits for the middle class. On paper, it sounded noble, but behind the curtain, Kennedy and his small team of investigators had discovered a very different story. Documents, hidden amendments, and confidential memos suggested that the real beneficiaries weren't struggling Americans at all but a network of political donors and consulting firms tied to Van Hollen's own campaign machine. Kennedy's voice never trembled as he presented the evidence, but his eyes told the story of a man both furious and heartbroken. "You can't say you're helping the farmer when you're feeding the fox," he said, holding up a stack of papers for all to see. "This isn't about left or right, it's about right and wrong." The audience, journalists, staffers, and a handful of citizens lucky enough to witness hysteria, leaned forward, captivated. Across the room, Van Hollen sat rigid, his usually composed demeanor cracking under the weight of Kennedy's words. The tension was electric. Senators whispered among themselves. Cameras flashed. One aide nervously shuffled papers, while another whispered frantically into a phone. Kennedy pressed on, revealing connections that reached far beyond policy, connections that hinted at backroom deals, quietly passed contracts, and a betrayal of public trust. Each revelation hit harder than the last. And yet, Kennedy never turned it into theater. He spoke as a man carrying the burden of truth, appealing not to politics but to conscience. But this wasn't just a battle of facts, it was a battle of hearts. Kennedy's speech spoke to a frustration that millions of Americans feel every day, the sense that no matter who they vote for, the powerful always seem to find a way to win. He didn't attack Van Hollen as a villain but as a symbol of what's gone wrong in Washington. "We've all made mistakes," Kennedy said softly, "but when your mistakes cost Americans their livelihoods, that's not just politics, that's betrayal." Then came the turning point. Van Hollen, visibly shaken, tried to respond. "This is political theater," he shouted, his voice echoing across the chamber. But Kennedy didn't flinch. "If truth is theater," he replied, "then I'll gladly play my part." The audience erupted, some clapping, others shouting in disbelief. It was raw, unscripted democracy in action. Over the next hour, committees scrambled to verify the documents, fact-checkers raced to confirm details, news networks cut into programming. By evening, the confrontation had dominated every headline in America. Outside the Capitol, crowds gathered, waving flags, demanding accountability. Kennedy didn't stop there. He called for a bipartisan ethics investigation, saying that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and it's high time Washington got a little sunshine. As the dust settled, something remarkable happened. Across party lines, Americans began talking again, and not about ideology, but about integrity. Kennedy's courage reminded people of what leadership should look like: conviction without arrogance, truth without compromise. Even some of the Van Hollen supporters admitted privately that they were stunned by the revelations and the calm yet forceful way Kennedy handled them. In the final moments of the session, Kennedy looked around the room, his face tired but resolute. "We can't fix what we won't face," he said quietly, "but if we face it together, there's nothing this country can't overcome." The chamber stood in silence, the weight of his words hanging in the air long after he'd left. Outside, the night air buzzed with news crews and citizens talking passionately about what they'd just witnessed. Some were angry, some hopeful, but for the first time in a long time, people were listening. Kennedy had not just exposed a hidden agenda, he had reignited a fading belief that truth, no matter how deeply buried, still has the power to shake the foundations of power itself. And as the lights of the Capitol glowed against the dark Washington sky, one thing was certain: this was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a reckoning.